This is a course on Protestant wisdom, which invites the question, what is wisdom? It's very common for us to approach the quest for wisdom in terms of looking for medicine for all the things that ail us within our day and age. We look for an answer to nihilism, to materialism, to scientific reductionism. And yet, you don't raise healthy children on medicine. What we are looking for is solid food and the ability to digest that. And this, in many respects, is what this course in wisdom is about. To give you the means to digest solid food and to appreciate its value. And with the strength that that food gives you, to act within God's world. The shape of this course is determined by a movement from understanding ourselves in relationship to God, to understanding God himself in his world. And beyond that, to think about human nature, to think about economics, society, our vision of the world in the light of these things. We'll start off by looking at people like John Calvin, and John Calvin's great introduction to his Institutes of the Christian Religion, as he talks about the knowledge of God and how it implies a knowledge of ourselves, and how we must always relate these things together as the Son of God's truth reveals the truth of our lives. As we see in the spectacles of Scripture, the true reality of the world within which we live. We'll be looking at people like Todd Billings as he talks about the challenges of facing up to the problems of the religion of our age, moralistic therapeutic deism, which absents God from his world, which detaches us from our true ends as his creatures, and which leaves the world centered upon our subjectivity in a way that is stifling, that destroys the rich and textured world that God has placed us within. Beyond that, we'll be looking at texts that talk about the confessions of the church and how we are to think about good works and conversion and how we must be transformed in order to understand God's truth. We'll be looking at God as he is revealed within the mirror of his word, using authors like Thomas Aquinas and his famous 5 ways. And we'll be looking at Pierre-Marie Emonet's treatment of this within his book, God Seen in the Mirror of the World, and how he presents it as a way of perceiving the world in the light of God's truth. We'll be looking at E.A. Burt and C.S. Lewis and their discussion of the world, the pictures that we bring to the world, the way that we see ourselves embedded within the world, and how these things have developed through specific historical events, how they developed within the Middle Ages, how they developed within the scientific revolution, and how the way that we see the world is shaped by a particular understanding of what we should be looking for, of what type of world we exist in, what sort of questions need to be answered. And we'll be thinking about ways in which Christians can give different answers to these questions, can frame the quest differently. We'll be looking at the fraught questions of human nature in our day and age, using people like Oliver O'Donovan and C.S. Lewis as our interlocutors, thinking about the way in which human nature is threatened on many fronts through our technologies, through medical developments, and how we must get a grasp of who we are and how human nature is defined, get a grasp and a grip upon this truth, so we will be able to answer the questions that face us in the future. We'll be looking at issues of politics and economics, reading people like John Ruskin as he thinks about economics built around anthropology, the questions of who we are and how that shapes the way that we trade and we relate and we develop wealth and understand value as a society. Using writers like Oliver O'Donovan and Richard Hooker, we'll be thinking about the fraught political questions of our day and age, and how often we have fallen back upon issues of technique and running things according to mere procedures and universal patterns without actually coming to a deep acquaintance with reality and the principles of wisdom with which to change it. We'll be thinking about how to be good citizens, how the Scripture teaches us to act within the world as people in society, how to transform our understanding of authority, of legitimacy, of political action, of representation, and all these other issues that we think about so poorly within our current context. Wisdom is about discovering truthful ways of life in the world, about learning to live as God's people in His world, relating to Him as we ought to, understanding ourselves as we ought to, relating to His creation as we ought to, and living in society as we ought to. The challenge of wisdom is a great one within our day and age and has never been more relevant. 500 years following the Reformation, the other question that we face is Protestant wisdom something that is meaningful anymore? Has the Reformation run its course? Is there anything that the Reformation can bring that we haven't already heard, that we haven't already learned from? Does it have anything to bring to the 21st century and its challenges? Or has it run out of steam? What I hope this course will achieve is to give you a sense of the value of the Reformation and of Protestant wisdom, to uncover those dusty boxes in the attic that may have been neglected, to take off the dust, to open them up, and to show the riches that actually belong to us, to swim upstream from some of the sources that you may already be familiar with, and to look beyond them to discover some of the riches that lie behind. I hope this course will provide an understanding of why, as Protestants, we do not need to have, as we so often have, a tragic inferiority complex, as we've forgotten what we truly possess, the legacy that has been left to us. As we rediscover this, as we learn of some of the great figures from the past that have much to teach us, we will have the resources with which to stand firm in our day and age against forthcoming challenges. We'll have the ability to be confident in the message of the gospel to the 21st century. We'll be confident in the resources that the tradition has given us, not just as we go back to the Reformation, but even before that. We'll be looking at people like Aquinas and other figures who help us to understand that the Protestant tradition does not have to end with Luther and Calvin, but can go back even further than that. All of these things are ours and give us means by which to answer the problems of our time. In the book of Proverbs, we read about the quest for wisdom. And the quest for wisdom is compared to the quest for a wife. The young man who's addressed in the book of Proverbs by his mother and father is poised between two different women, the adulterous woman and the wise woman who's a good wife. He's also poised between Lady Wisdom and Folly, Folly who calls him astray into the byways and to his death. And we face a similar choice in our time. How do we respond to the call of wisdom? Are we those who will give wisdom our hearts and our commitment? And this is what a course on Protestant wisdom involves. It involves the commitment of the whole person to the quest for wisdom. As the writer of Proverbs says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. This is a quest that demands your whole being. And as we explore these sources of wisdom, we'll discover it's not just a matter of our heads, but a conversion of the whole person. One of the first things we notice as we look through some of the resources that we are studying for this course is the significance of an existential apprehension of God's presence in the world. A sense of the significance of the relationship between the knowledge of God and the knowledge of ourselves. How we think about God, how we think about our world, is something that has implications for us. We can't escape being caught up within this quest. It's something that demands our beings. It's something that demands and has implications for our lives. And so we'll be talking about things such as conversion, how the Reformers spoke about the need for the person to be reoriented towards God in order to understand themselves, the world, and God aright. If we are to be people who are wise, we must be changed. We'll be learning how to look at the world not just as an object of speculation or as something to be plumbed by the work of physical sciences, but as a realm in which we're at home, a realm in which God meets us and relates to us. We'll be learning about the importance of piety. Piety is constitutive of wisdom, that we cannot truly know God unless we are related to him in love, trust, dependence, and a response of hope and faith to what he has said. We'll be looking at the way that God reveals himself to us in history, in the realm of covenant, and how all of this culminates in God's revelation in his Son. How God reveals himself not just as a series of propositions, but personally, as the God with whom we must do, the God with whom we have to do, the God with whom we have to relate. We'll be talking about the alienation that God has overcome, the alienation that exists between a rebellious humanity that resists the knowledge of God, because that knowledge implies uncomfortable truths about ourselves. And we'll be thinking about how we can participate in bringing to light God's truth to others who have not yet seen it. Having provided the non-speculative context for our exploration of Christian truth and the ways in which we ourselves are always and forever implicated within it, we will move to exploring the world in the light of true wisdom. We'll be thinking about how science has framed our world, how we've been taught to relate to the natural world around us, how we've been taught to relate to ourselves. So, for instance, we think of our world very much as the product of natural forces, impersonal forces, forces that have no meaning or direction. And yet, as we look at things from a biblical perspective and a Christian perspective, we will have means to look beyond the limited view of modern science, recognize its strengths, but also see God's presence within the world, that God is active and near to the world, nearer to us than we are to ourselves. The God who holds all things in being, the God who directs all things to their ends, the God who enables things to achieve their full action and power within the world, the God who achieves the essence of beings. And as we move beyond this, we'll be thinking about the ways that we relate to him. We'll be talking about the reality of the religion of our time, of moralistic therapeutic deism, and how it abstracts and alienates God from his world, how it puts God to one side, and how it presents in the place of a newness of life formed by the gospel a mere moralism, how it places us at the center of the universe rather than God, this therapeutic impulse that places us and our concerns and our feelings as the coordinating reality around which all else is drawn. And we'll be talking about the meaning of work in the world as it is shaped by God's truth, as we learn to act in the light of who he is, of how he has created us, and of what he has placed us in his creation to do. We face peculiar challenges as we face the developments of technology, science, medicine, and all these other things within the 21st century. And yet, within Scripture, within Christian wisdom, we find the resources to respond to these things, to the developments of genetic engineering, to the developments of modern technology, to the developments of science and the view that it gives us of the world. We will see within this course on Christian wisdom how we can speak with force and clarity to issues of moral concern within our day and age. We'll be integrating all of this into our broader understanding of who we are and who God is and what his creation is. We'll be thinking about human nature and how human nature is something that we must recover a sense of, how human nature is bound up with our knowledge of God. If we do not understand who God is, we do not understand who we are. We'll be thinking about the response that we must have to some of the deep economic and social and political questions of our day and age. We'll be talking about the wisdom principles where we can move beyond the technique-driven society that we live in, that would seek to answer all of the questions and concerns of our day and age with techniques and procedures and protocols and all these sorts of things. And we'll seek to understand how to develop a deep attunement to reality, a deep understanding of the patterns of reality. Wisdom is different from merely obeying commandments, ticking boxes. Being receptive to God's word lies at the heart of it, but as we develop that reception to God's word, we learn perception, the ability to see within a world where things can be unclear, the right way to go. And so this course on wisdom will seek to equip you to engage in this sort of perceptive action within the world, to act with force, with clarity, with insight, and with power in a world where so much is muddy and unclear, where so many of our moral questions are ones that confuse us and leave us disoriented, in a world where so much is confusing, and a world where we feel so threatened by the things that are arriving on our horizon. We will be thinking about how to go forth with confidence. Within this course, we'll be looking at issues of politics in depth, trying to teach ourselves how to become people who are true members of society, not just individuals who benefit from society's services, but those who bring this Christian wisdom to bear upon the public, upon the polity, upon your church, upon your society and community, your neighborhood, and your country. We'll be thinking about the ways in which we can be people that are formed by wisdom, formed by worship, formed by God's truth, formed by the perception of His presence in the world, to be people who run in this truth, people who act with confidence in this truth, and people who change the world by this truth. So much of our society is shaped by a lack of wisdom, by a quest for mere knowledge that is detached from any sense of knowledge's true ends, a search for knowledge that does not have any impact upon the person, that leaves us unchanged, that leaves our lives unmarked by truth's power. Within this course, I want us to all think about the ways in which this truth bears upon our existence, the weight that it has within our lives. And hopefully, as we go through these books, as we go through these topics, we will learn something about ourselves. We will learn something about God's world and our place and calling within it. And we will be given the resources and a window onto further resources with which to speak to it with the clarity of God's truth and the power of that truth.